Where your heart is, there your treasure will be. Miss Randolph's heart was set upon God, upon God's love and sharing that love. And so she was one of the richest, wealthiest people I've ever met, because her treasure was in heaven. God was her treasure. And she shared out of the abundance of the wealth that she had with all of us. One of the quotes that I often share with the students of St. Mary's School and Sacred Heart of Jesus High School was from St. Catherine of Siena, one of our Dominican saints, who said, "Be who God meant you to be. You'll set the world on fire." She was who God meant her to be. She allowed God to form and shape her heart and her mind. And because of that, she had this tremendous wealth of love and creativity and integrity that she passed on to generations of children at St. Mary's School. She taught she was part of St. Mary's School for 58 years. It's longer than a lot of you have been alive. I was very blessed to have her in the 3rd and the 4th grade, both grades. I was talking with Judge Danny Breen, who did our first reading, and he said, in my 8 years at St. Mary's, I only had 3 teachers. I said, yeah, when I was at St. Mary's, in my 6 years, I only had 4. And one of the Nashville Dominicans who was in temporary vows, and she didn't make permanent vows, she taught 1st and 2nd grade. And Miss Randolph was upstairs, and she taught the 3rd and the 4th grade. And I had Miss Parrish for half a year, and then Miss Tate for the second half of the year, and then Sister Mary Martin for the 6th grade. That was the year that I finished 6th grade was the year that they ceased having the 7th and 8th grade. In latter years, my mother and father used to tell me that they shut down the 7th and 8th grade to keep my class from going forward. Somehow Miss Randolph had 2 full classes of children, and our backs faced one another. The 3rd grade faced one way, the 4th grade faced the other. Somehow she kept us under really good control. She loved to remind me of the story after I got here as pastor. In fact, we have a group that prays the rosary on Sunday afternoons at 3. And so she and Tracy came to the rosary that day. It was the Sunday after we'd had the funeral for Mary Duke. And she had not come to the funeral. She was not feeling well, but she was there at the rosary. I was so happy to see her. We got through praying the rosary, and she goes, I want to remind you about what this little guy said about me, pointing at me. I was like, oh, Lord. She said, yeah, you went home and told your father that you were bored. And she goes, and you know what your father said to you? And I said, yes, you've reminded me about that before. My dad looked at me and he said, an intelligent person is never bored. He didn't say, oh, I'll go talk to Miss Randolph so she steps her game up, or she said, no, he looked at me and said, you know, kind of get your head in the game in a sense. I remember sitting in her class, and we were not allowed to turn around in our seat when she was teaching the other class. And I was always like listening very intently about what she was saying behind me. And so I would try to like bend over, especially when I heard her writing on the board, because I figured she wouldn't be able to. She had her back to me, but of course, like as you teachers know, you have eyes in the back of your head. So So there was a few times when I would have to sit out in the hall because I was turning around in my seat. Of course, the worst thing that could possibly happen to you while you're sitting out in the hall was that Father Vincent Hines would come walking down the hall. That was the worst thing in life that could happen to a third grader at the time. It seemed to happen every time I was out there. First time I ever tasted apple butter was in her classroom. She had a way of sharing simple joys with us that just left this beautiful impression that stayed with you really all your life. She treated us all the same, with tremendous unconditional love. And she had a way of, you know, I've heard this over and over the last few days, but it's something that I always recognize as people would share with me about Miss Randolph. A lot of times, you know, you run into someone in the community and they'll say, "Yeah, I went to St. Mary's and I had Miss Randolph." And she was always someone that left a deep impression on each of us. But she had a way of making each of us feel special, feel unique. And she didn't just do that when we were little kids. She did that throughout our lives. She used to sit in that first pew right there in that section. Somebody said we should permanently close that section in honor of Mary Duke and Miss Randolph. And I noticed, you know, it's pretty easy to see that pew there. I noticed one day that she was taking notes during my homily. My first thought was, well, I think I'm being graded. So I asked her got up the courage to ask her one day, and she said, "No, I'm kind of senile, and I can't remember what you say during Mass. I'm trying to take notes so I can remind myself after Mass." What struck me about that is that here was a person, you know, that I considered a living saint, that still in her 90s is trying to grow in holiness, grow in her understanding of God and her love of God. How awesome is that? How amazing is that? My brother Greg did a tribute. We had a little celebration for her I think it's about 20 years ago. And he wrote a really beautiful tribute to her that he read there. And I was reading over it, and so I want to share a section of it with you. I didn't ask him if I could do that, so Greg, I hope you don't mind. So, my brother Greg decided a few years ago to go back to school and to get a master's degree. And in all things, he decided to get a master's degree in writing, or professional writing, composition, as we would have called it back in the day. And I thought that was very strange. I was like, what is he doing? That's a dying art, writing. He said this, that as he was thinking about that and deciding, he said, I found that I had this undying attraction to literacy, to reading and to writing. He called it a homing signal that beckoned me back to go to school. He said, emanating from a certain fourth grade classroom in which sat a lively soul on a stool with reading glasses on her nose and a copy of Charlotte's Web in her hand. Her voice sounded different from other people. It had a mysterious quality to my fourth grade ears, like she was from another place. In that room, a love for reading and writing was imparted to me and countless others. Really, I should say that this love of literacy was transmitted to me as one transmits a virus or an infection to another. Miss Randolph had a virus, an infection. And the only cure for her was more books to read, more stories to tell, more songs to sing, more poems to recite, more wonderful characters to bring to life. As her voice rose and sank along the countless narrative cadences, my heart eagerly followed. The miracle that Miss Randolph performed in our lives was not the result of some amazing technique or incredible curriculum, but it was the fruit of a life on fire. He quotes John Wesley. He says, "When you set yourself on fire, people love to come and see you burn." And that was it. Miss Randolph was on fire, and we couldn't help but watch. That's so beautifully put, and I know that's a sentiment that so many of us had. That I fell in love with reading stories about the heroes of our country, the heroes of our faith, and that love for those stories came from that fourth grade teacher sitting on her stool, sharing her love for stories, her love for God's truth, her love for seeing God's handiwork in creation. The grace that she had helped transform a lot of lives and helped to make our school what it is today. We carry her legacy with us every day and every year at our school with deep gratitude to her and to Mary Duke also in a special way. The library was dedicated to her and to Mary Duke. Had a beautiful little celebration there. Mr. Doug Roth gave a few words, and he barely got started, and he started getting choked up because of the impact that Miss Randolph had on him. And there's so many of us that feel that way, that experience that. It's amazing what she did and what God did through her. So there's no ways that we can, a little 10-minute, well, I'm stretching it a little bit, a little 10-minute homily, that we can fully kind of say what we would, what everyone feels in our hearts, what we would love to say. But she had this patience, this diligence, this integrity, this joy, and she did that because of that she used the gifts that God gave her and shared them. There's a children's song that says, "The only love we keep is the love we give away," and that's why she was so rich. She gave it all away. Gave it to our school, to our parish community, to our community here in Jackson, Madison County. And so we want to say thank you, Miss Randolph, for being faithful to who God meant you to be